Oh, go ahead.
Well, good evening. It is a Friday night. Some people call this the Sabbath. Tomorrow's Saturday. Some people call that the Sabbath. But hey, this is the time to get together with people. And I have invited the different ones in my groups. I put the link there. I just put it right now. So I don't know if people are going to be showing up. I have Bryan Parker here, though. This is great. And I was just on a Zoom that was very interesting. The guy was talking about how Trump, before he got out, he had said something about, and I don't even know if I can remember it all, but look at my notes. They're so, what's the word? Messy that it's hard to read. All these notes. Interesting. He said something about, he said something about the United States of America versus the United States Corporation, and how when before Trump left, maybe a lot of people know that the United States is considered bankrupt as a corporation, but he said something about that he had put something, Trump had put together some type of a thing. Let me see if I wrote it on these notes. I have it somewhere around here. I should have put Trump, then I would know where it was. But it was some type of a declaration or edict or something. Oh, okay, here we go. USA owner is US Corp, and the corporation went bankrupt. Oh, here it is, Executive Order 157. And he said something about the US had martial law all this time, but the USA is under an emergency, you know, and they kind of used the scamdemic thing in order to kind of usher in. That's probably why we see a lot of military vehicles, like BDU looking, battle dress uniform. It looks like a camouflage looking Jeeps and all that stuff coming on trains and all that jazz. That's probably, because we're under a state of an emergency or an emergency thing. And we could do FOIAs about that if you needed to look into that more. But look up that Executive Order 157. I don't know. Let's maybe look real fast and see if I can find anything about that. I was going to also take a look at something else that someone on one of my, let me see if I can look at, let me look at this one. Let me see. Where is it? Okay. Let me see. Oh yeah, I'm a little all over the place right now because
Well, the
let me look.
executive orders should be way past 157 by now. I mean, they're in the thousands.
Oh, well, let me see if I know how to even do this. Um, what could I do? Okay. Um, I did do, let me see. I guess I'm gonna need to somehow, I don't know. How do I get out of this thing? Let me see. I don't want to go with mail. Let me see. Wait. Yeah, that's the hard thing about this technology stuff is I don't always know how to set up my page, but oh, okay, here we go. Can you see this screen where it says 15 US Code 1681 Administrative Enforcement? Are you seeing that, Bryan?
No,
This,
you're not sharing a screen right now.
oh, I'm not? Okay, let me. Oh, I hate it when I do that. Okay, hang on a second. I'm gonna make that smaller. I can hear my dog out there screeching at the rat in the wind or something. All right, so share screen. Ah, here we go. All right. No, not that one. And not this one, but right here. Does it say 15 US Code 1681? Administrative Enforcement? I wanted to read this.
Yeah,
Okay. I don't know if you
I'm
can.
expanding it right now so I can see it.
Let me see. Command plus. I'll see.
Right.
Yeah, Command plus is working for me. All right. I wanted to get this out of the way because a lot of us are doing administrative type of things with writing letters to different companies and such. And I don't know, is 15 US code, is that all under commercial stuff or something? I'm feeling a little discombobulated
Well,
after.
15 USC,
Uh-huh.
United States Code is for the company. That's how they're supposed to be operating.
Oh, okay, cool. So we're just basically holding these people or whatever they companies, persons, whatever, we're holding them to their stuff. That's what this type of thing is for. That other Zoom I was just on, whoa.
Well, technically, we don't have the authority to do that. That's why the Attorney General is in place,
Ah,
because you turn information over to the Attorney General, because the Attorney General is one that has the authority to hold them accountable.
wow, that's fantastic. What about that CFPB? Because they're the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. Do they have a charter with the federal
Right.
government? Is it
Oh
them?
yeah, I'm sure they do, and you could turn complaints over to them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I did do a couple of submit complaints or claims to the CFPB, which is Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You know, like your car or your house or maybe your credit cards or something like that. You could do those types of things to say, hey, my rights were violated. I wasn't given the proper notice that says that I could opt out of any third party reporting, or I'm seeing some, things on my consumer credit report that are, an error, like they have someone else's address and I never lived there before, stuff like that. So you could do those types of things. Anyways, I did do a couple of them, and I did notice that the companies actually have to have some type of an agreement with the CFPB because like this one, what was it, a title company? The CFPB says we do not have a contract with them. And I'm like, oh, are you guys like the Better Business Bureau or something? You guys pay each other stuff or what? But I did notice that the CFPB did take the social security number. They asked me for that. And I'm like, so you're getting paid through that? That's how you're getting paid? Is that what it is? And the lady, she didn't really know, but I said, am I paying for this? She says, no, it's already taken care of. Is that because I gave you the social security number? She goes, maybe. But anyways, I did notice that because that particular, what was it, a title company or escrow company didn't have an agreement with the CFPB, they said, oh, we're going to forward this to the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission. And I go, okay, well, I haven't heard anything from it because I had asked about if any of the First Agent Bank had done any 1099A, which is an abandonment of property, getting me out of my place because I had a short sale. And that was like a long time ago. But because we maybe are having trauma based on having to be moved out of some place or something, you might not have your wherewithal and you're like trying to find a place to land and have to try to get your credit good so that you can maybe get into something different or something. So you don't always, have the wherewithal or, you know, to know what's going on. But you can always go back and look at things and I don't know, they call it nunc pro tunc, where it's like now as and then. And you can go back. And when you think that there's fraud involved or identity theft or something, then, there's maxims of law that say that fraud vitiates everything. And, sometimes we accidentally volunteer or we gift or give over all of our stuff to the pirates and we don't realize because they kind of put the blame on us and said, hey, you just didn't pay your stuff, and that's why we're taking this. And see your name right there. It has this legal name there of you, and you're the one that's supposed to do this, and you didn't do that, so we can take your stuff. But it's very interesting when you look at the broad scheme of everything to find out, did we really actually ever own anything? Because when you look at the contract or you look at the titles or the deed, I mean, what does it say on it? Who was the financial institution? Did you get a loan, or was it from your credit? Did you put money down at the same time? So what I'm finding out is that all these little boo-boos that we make unknowingly because we're falling in love with a car or a house and we just want to sign everything and okay, and they rush us through, but we didn't really have time to look. That was there a big notice there that said that we could opt out of, the third party reporting? Did they make it clear to us that we had rights, and were we gifting them or waiving all of our rights? So we can look at our contracts and maybe scrutinize them a little bit better. And it is time for us to understand that if we're going to be living in this world, there's a lot of things that we can get ourselves into trouble by not really having the wherewithal and knowing, or like Bryan has taught me, the capacity, not having the capacity. But then sometimes you don't get the full disclosure. So how can you have the capacity if you don't even get the full disclosure? And a lot of times I find, even with myself, and maybe as a female or even like a Latina, that I had been kind of socialized to maybe put your eyes down, don't be asking so many questions, don't be so talkative, just keep quiet, just obey orders, being in the military as well at age 17. Just obey the people, okay? And be quiet and go in your little corner over there, baby. And, but we do have to grow up. Part of growing up is becoming mature. And just as our body and our face and everything starts to look a little older, our mental capacity, our emotions, our maturity, we have to grow up. We have to grow up in understanding, and we have to walk circumspectly, carefully on everything that we do. Even this little YouTube channel thing that I have here, I'm not any type of professional anything. I mean, other than the little things that maybe I have licenses for or such, or a little bit of education here or there. But I'm just a regular woman and just kind of groping in the darkness, not really knowing, like when you get under a big wave when you're surfing or something, and you're kind of in chaos and you don't really know which way is up, and you kind of see, oh, there's something I can hang on to, and you grab something. We're all kind of learning that there's a lot more than what meets the eye. So I'm not giving any legal
Well,
advice or anything like
a,
that.
a, a lot
Go ahead.
a lot of what you're referring to here is financial activity, right? And what does financial activity always bring with it? It's taxes, right? I mean, I hear people, talking about all these fucking ways like to take care of like speeding tickets and stuff like that. You have to realize that all these things, they have taxes involved. And one of the things people don't realize, I mean, and there's all these different ideas on how to fucking take care of these things. You know, get a hold of the ticketing agency, ask them for their EIN, because the EIN is what they're supposed to be reporting their taxes through. Now, if you've had a taxable event, for instance, if you're talking to like the clerk of courts over the phone, And this
Mm-hmm.
is what you do. You call them up over the phone. If you're talking to clerk of courts over the phone, ChaYah, can you tell me where a taxable event occurs, what the money amount is?
You mean what they had put on a ticket?
What is the money amount where a taxable event starts? You don't know, right?
Oh, you mean
Neither do
an
they.
amount like
It starts at 600,
Yeah, $600.
right? It starts at $600, but
Mm-hmm.
they don't even know this, all right?
Oh
So
yeah.
you just contact them and say, hey, I have reason to believe that a taxable event has occurred here.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I need your EIN number. That way I can report this in my taxes. What do you think is going to happen with that ticket? It's going to disappear because they don't want dirty old Uncle Sam with the IRS coming back to them going, oh, wait a minute, there's a taxable event here. You didn't report this? Yeah, they don't want that. All of these things relate to taxable events, whether it's your house, your car, whatever the case may be. You
Mm-hmm.
see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a
And
great
nobody likes that letter from the IRS.
that's a great tip for anybody out there. So yeah, because even though if let's say that the ticket
I've been,
was only 125 bucks, we still have reason to believe that it is a taxable event because they may be charging more on the back end that we're not aware of. Is that what you're saying?
I use the term reason to believe.
Yeah.
It comes from an attorney by the name of Jerry Spence. Uh, it's spelled with a G. Jerry Spence is one of the most winning attorneys in the USA. And that's a phrase that he would use. And
Yeah.
he used it because it was a signal to the judge that, hey, I know something here. Do you want me to really divulge everything I know?
Yeah, and I liked this one Zoom that I was on just a few minutes ago, and that man said something about, he goes, Judge, I may have some state secrets that require an in-camera, um, judge's chamber. I thought that was good. That was like,
Right. And
wow.
that's what Jerry Spence meant when he would say, I have reason to believe, because that alludes to, guess what? I can spill the beans here. Do you want me to or no?
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, one of the subscribers to my channel, he had given me this 15 US code 1681, and it was about administrative enforcement. I thought real quick, it looks short. I'd just like to read it just so I can know how to utilize this in case there's some event that I may need to utilize this for. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read it. It looks like it's just a quick paragraph. It doesn't look like it's pages long. So this is 15 U.S. Code 1681S, Administrative Enforcement. The Federal Trade Commission shall be authorized to enforce compliance with the requirements imposed by this subchapter under the Federal Trade Commission Act. Notice that it says Federal Commission Act, and that's something that might be different than these codes, because this is like an act. I'm believing, and I'm not sure, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, Bryan. Are these acts something to do with law versus these codes have something to do with those corporations? When you get into the acts?
Well, any of the acts are, yeah, any of the acts are in-house policy is the best way to look at them. All right. When you look at law, all right, Constitution says that Congress is the only entity authorized to make law. So what do you have from there? You've got what's called public law. It's often listed as PL, okay? And you'll have public law, and they'll list stuff out. And then from there, snippets of that public law will be broken down and be put into United States Code, USC. And
Okay.
those are the codes. And you get lower and lower, even down to like the county or the city, and you'll have municipal acts and codes, regulations, even federally. There's the Federal Code of Regulations, the CFR. Those are all considered lower law as compared to United States public law.
Cool.
And that's one of the things people need to realize is that the decisions that are made in some of those, they don't all equate equally with each other. For instance, okay, if you have a federal court case, you can't refer to a state case as being precedent because it's a different jurisdiction. And in fact, it's a lower jurisdiction.
Oh, okay.
So with a federal case, you'd have to look at either other federal decisions or opinions that were made, or look at the Supreme Court, for instance. Right? And so the same thing falls down with these acts as well. So yeah, go ahead, finish reading that.
So these acts are.
But also remember, in the very beginning of this act, right, but even remember, in the very beginning of this act, it tells you who can enforce it. It doesn't say that you can enforce it. It tells you who can enforce this act. So yeah, go ahead, finish reading that act.
Okay, so it says Federal Trade Commission Act 15 USC 41 et sec. With respect to consumer reporting agencies and all other persons subject thereto, except to the extent that enforcement of the requirements imposed under this subchapter is specifically committed to some other government agency under any of subparagraphs A through G of subsection B1 and subject to subtitle B of the Consumer Financial Protection Act of 2010, 12 USC 5511 et sec, subsection B1, for the purpose of the exercise by the Federal Trade Commission of its functions and powers under the Federal Trade Commission Act, a violation of any requirement or prohibition imposed under this subchapter shall constitute an unfair or deceptive act or practice in commerce in violation of Section 5A of the Federal Trade Commission Act, 15 USC 45A, and shall be subject to enforcement. Here we go. Enforcement by the Federal Trade Commission under Section 5B of that Act with respect to any consumer reporting agency or person that is subject to enforcement by the Federal Trade Commission pursuant to this subsection, irrespective of whether that person is engaged in commerce or meets any other jurisdictional tests under the Federal Trade Commission Act. The Federal Trade Commission Act shall have such procedural, investigative, and enforcement powers, including the power to issue procedural rules in enforcing compliance with the requirements imposed under this subchapter, and to require the filing of reports, the production of documents, and the appearance of witnesses, as though the applicable terms and conditions of the Federal Trade Commission Act were part of this subchapter. Any person violating any of the provisions of this subchapter shall be subject to the penalties and entitled to the privileges and immunities provided in the Federal Trade Commission Act, as though the applicable terms and provisions of such act are part of this subchapter, except as otherwise provided by Subtitle B of the Consumer Financial Protection Act of 2010, in the event of a knowing violation which constitutes a pattern or practice of violations of the subchapter, the Federal Trade Commission may commence a civil action to recover a civil penalty in a district court of the United States against any person that violates the subchapter. In such action, such person shall be liable for a civil penalty of not more than $2,500 per violation. So I think that when we remember some of those banks that were making, accounts for people who were not real, like Wells Fargo and the different ones, I don't know if World Savings or Wachovia was involved, but apparently they
Like
had,
the robo signing.
yeah, apparently there was some action that was done. And then that's kind of when they came up with this Confederate thing. Go ahead.
Okay, there's an important thing to here pay attention to. A couple important things. Number one, this is talking about the district courts of the United States, right? So that tells you that this is federal. Okay, these are the federal courts.
Okay.
And if you go up to, I think it was like the 5th or 6th line in there, there's a very important statement, and I think it's also found in the 14th Amendment. There's a very important statement there that says, and people subject to. Okay. Now, when it says, and people subject to this act, what that's telling you is that evidently there also must people be that are not subject to this act. That's why I say you have to read these things forwards and backwards.
And I don't see where it says
And
people.
so when you read it backwards, it's saying, or persons, it says persons subject to this act. Well, when it says persons subject to this act, that means, well, evidently there must be persons who are not subject to this act. That's why they say that the devil lies in the details.
Yeah, well, obviously, if nobody is doing any type of purchasing or anything like that, they're not really subject to this act, right?
Those might be the other persons that are not subject. Exactly. So when they say, persons that are subject to it, then you got to say, oh, wait a minute, who are the persons that are not subject? Because, gosh, I want to be one of those.
Yeah, people who don't buy any cars or houses, or at least they're thinking that they're buying, so they're not dealing with any type of alleged commerce. I mean, I looked at the word commerce and it said it's for profit, and I figured, well, hey, wait, my electricity bill, if I pay that, I'm not making a profit, so I don't really think I'm involved in commerce here. If I'm just, needing electricity, I'm not really involved in commerce. But I think that's why they made our name like the military. When I was in the military, they give you these BDUs, which, like I said, I told myself I'd never wear green, and I am still wearing green. What is up with that? Oh my goodness, poor me. But anyways, I digress. But on the uniforms, they put your last name. They put your last name.
They'll go and twist things around on you. But they'll go and twist things around on you, and you say, oh, well, I'm not in commerce. I'm not profiting off this. Yeah, just because I'm buying electricity. That way I can stay warm in my house. And they'll say, wait a minute, that is how you're profiting. You're profiting by staying warm. That is a profit to you from the trade that you were just involved with. Those are the tricks they use.
But they converted my name. I didn't even sign anything. I was calling on the phone. So I didn't really put my name on anything, not even any e-commerce or e-document or piece of paper. I just called it, and then they did ask. Oh, that was another thing I remember. Remember that Judge Dale? He had said if a financial institution, or any corporation for that matter, if they ask you for the social security number, that's a federal offense to compel you of the social security number, because we know it's not ours, it belongs to the state. And it has the all caps name, which is not even us either. But he says by law, they are required to ask for it, but that doesn't mean we have to give it up. And apparently the way they were really seriously violating me by saying, well, you want electricity, don't you? I said, yeah. Well, you've got to show some type of ID. And I said, well, hey, this is in the back of this card. This is not a form of ID. So then she kind of escalated it even more and said, all right, well then what about your passport? Do you have something like that? I go, yeah, but I know that's connected to the social security number too. But anyways,
Oh, here's the thing. Here's the thing. That you always use that word or your name or eh, eh, here's the problem. Where did you ever claim that name? Have you ever claimed that name? Very, very few people have ever made a claim to it. So what name is being used? The way they look at it is that a name that's being used is the name that they created.
yeah,
It's the name of the organization that they created. And so
um,
you are actually using their property. And
exactly.
what do they have power over? You have power over what you create.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as you're using their property, they have authority over it until you go and put a claim to it. And now they're in a little bit of a bind.
And also, if they created something, that they have to make the remedy for me too. If they created it, they got to make the remedy or relief. Maybe remedy isn't the word I want to use, but
Well, they gave us the remedy.
what?
Oh, they gave us the remedy, the relief, they gave us the cure. The cure is okay, how do they have authority? Because they created the name, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Well, then I'll go and do the same thing. That's what I did. I went and did the same thing they did. I went and created a name that looks and sounds very much like the one that they lay claim to. And I also assigned a totally separate number from the social security number to that name. So now we're in a bind. Do they want to really talk to you in open court about whose entity is being used here? They don't they don't want to divulge that information, and they will never invite you to court because of that.
Hey, Brian, we had to click on the link again because we're going to get cut off. But I like this conversation.
That's
Uh,
right.
it's going to cut us
That's
off.
right. I'm gonna have to run here in a bit.
Okay.
So,
Thank you for being here. I
but
appreciate
it's good info.
Hey, Nicholas, if you want to get back on, just click on the link again and I'll do another. And we will continue. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Love you. Aya. Have a great night.
Thank you. Thanks. Shabbat Shalom.